Hi, I'm Rachel with Patterns and Pixels Canada, and on today's video, I'll be working on week 7 of my Winter Mystery Quilt from Threads That Binds. Let's get started. Okay, it's time to talk about week 7 for the Winter Mystery Quilt. But it's raining outside, and somebody got wet, and now he needs lots of attention. Would you mind? See this giant cat stand I bought for you? Let's go over there. Let's go over to the giant cat stand. You know, because you're a cat. That was not very graceful. Okay. Well, that lasted all of 5 seconds, didn't it? We'll see if I can get him to sit and cuddle while I talk about week 7. I'm very excited about week 7 because I believe this is the last week where I will be making units or blocks. And then theoretically, next week, week 8, the final week, I should be putting them all together in a quilt. And I want to know what I'm making. Before we do that though, let's look at what I've done so far, just in case you haven't seen any of my previous videos. But not to worry if you haven't, I'll put a link to them in the description below. So in the first week, yes sir, there you go. First week I made 2 blocks, this one and that one. Then the second week was making a variety of strip sets, stay here, a variety of strip sets, which have now all been trimmed into smaller strips. I'm assuming today we'll be doing something with these strips. Week 3, I made this block. I do have some extras of that block, so I'm hoping they get incorporated into the quilt as well. Week 4 was this one. Now week 5 was a big week. Week 5 I made that block, but then I also had to take some of my strip sets to make these. And that's where I'm sort of assuming that the last little bit I have for strip sets, I'm assuming today I'll get some, ooh, we're done, bye. I'm assuming today I'll get some white fabric in the pack that will go onto either side of this strip set, so that it is similar in style to these ones. And then last week was this block. Okay, let's find out if I'm right. This is week 7. Oh, interesting. Okay, so all of these bags in here have labels. And I thought the big one was going to be week 8, but it's not. The big one is this week. Week 8 is the small one. That's a really big piece of fabric. And something square, maybe like a notebook? All right, let's find out. I do hope it's something that I know what it is, because the last few weeks, the things they've been putting in is like the special prize. I haven't known what they were, and I've had to Google them. If it's a notebook though, I know what that is. Oh, okay, yes, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not a notebook. It's a notepad with 50 colorful sheets. But at least I don't have to Google anything. All right. It's all white fabric. No blue. Okay, I'm assuming strip set things are going to happen, but why do I have so much fabric? Maybe the quilt's going to have sashing or a border or something between the blocks? Let's find out. Okay. So I need to cut some 3-inch fabric from 6.5-inch fabric. And they want the strip set units made in week 6. Okay, so yep, I definitely do need that today. And it says I need a long tape measure. What's different about today? Oh, they want me to join the strips end to end to make one long piece that is 66.5 inches long. And then it says be accurate with an exclamation mark. Okay, no pressure. And then I have to label it TB. Top and bottom, maybe? I don't know. And then yes, it looks like I'll be doing the same sort of thing with my strips where I have white fabric on the side. Now I remember from making these ones, so the blocks are 6.5. So the blocks need to be 6.5 inches. And I found that was really close. So I might just, yeah, I mean this one, I obviously haven't checked them all. This one is exactly 6.5 inches. I think I might give them another press. Just check them all, make sure they're right. And then there will be a lot of pins being used today, because when I sewed these ones, they're okay, but some of them don't quite make it to 6.5 inches. They're just a bit shy. I found it difficult matching up the two pieces. I'd stitch one side and it just sort of pulls to the machine a little bit. So I think I'll be more cautious when I do these ones today. First thing I'm going to do then is, shoot back over there so I don't lose anything. I'll get myself organized to do all of the cutting for this fabric. I'll start by pressing it. And then I'll find a long measuring tape, apparently. I've got one in here somewhere. And see if I can follow all of their cutting instructions. I'm very concerned that it says be accurate with an exclamation mark. Oh, we're normally accurate as quilters, right? So why is this one extra accurate? It's making me nervous. All right, let's get started. Before I start trimming, I just want to explain what it is I've done. I did read through the instructions quite a few times before getting to this point. The first thing I did was opened up the fabric and pressed out the fold lines, except for the one along this edge. That one I have pressed to within 1 inch of its length. As you know, in a previous video, I tried to avoid cutting fabric on a fold because you can end up with a bit of a bump or a wiggle where the fold is. But in this particular case, it's such a large piece of fabric, it's the only way that I'm going to be able to get the cuts that I need. The other thing I've done is folded the fabric so that the selvage edges are touching each other. Those are the ones on your fabric where you'll have the printed label of the manufacturer, so they're together. And then, if I'm reading this correctly, they want me to cut 13 strips going along that will then get stitched together into one long piece, kind of like you're doing binding on a quilt. And then those long pieces will then get cut into the units that they've asked for. So I'm going to go along now, very slowly, very carefully, making sure that my ruler doesn't move. It has grippies on the bottom of it. I do recommend that if you're doing something this size. It's even helpful when you're doing smaller things. And I can't quite fit the whole piece of fabric on my table. I suppose I could if I moved the sewing machine, but I don't want to. So I might pause at one point and sort of repress and put things back down. It's all to make sure that my fabric is as flat as possible, as straight as possible, because of that "be accurate" exclamation point, which is freaking me out. All right, everybody cross your fingers. Let's make sure this works. Okay, there's my 13 strips. They want me to trim the selvage ends off, join these strips end to end to make one very long piece, and then start cutting units of that longer piece. Now I will need this fabric for the next step, but I think I want to do this entire step first and have it finished before I do the next step with this fabric, just so I don't confuse the two. So for the time being, I'm just going to pop this onto the back counter and trim selvages and sew them together. I've already sewn one of the strips to another one, like so. I haven't trimmed it yet, so the fabric is still underneath, but I thought I would show you how to do this. So I'm just getting to the end that I need. I've got the right side of the fabric facing up. I now grab another strip, one that hasn't been attached yet. Get the right side of the fabric, turn it over so I have right sides together. And then I'm just leaving a little bit of fabric sticking out the ends. And I will turn it on an angle. I find I'm okay with eyeballing this, but if you'd rather have a drawn line to follow, that also works. Ignore the tape. It's not relevant for what I'm doing right now. I am lining up my sewing needle with where the point is on the two fabrics where they meet, and I'm going to eyeball it as I stitch with the intent of ending up at this point. So there's my stitched line, and when I open up my fabric, I should have both right sides facing up, and I'd say that has lined up perfectly. Then I will go along once I've finished all of them and just trim this so that there's only a 1/4 inch of fabric left, and then obviously any dog ears that are still showing out the top and the bottom will get trimmed as well. So that's 3 of the strips sewn of the 13. And I'm just going to keep sliding along. I do make a point, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sliding the strip along my sewing machine. I have had problems in the past where I haven't been careful and I've put a twist into my fabric. So I find that by doing this, I make sure that I end up with the fabric facing up the way it should be and I haven't turned anything. the longer strips cut and ready to go. These ones I have to label as S, and there's quite a few of them. 13, I think? No, 7. I had to cut 13 strips and then sew them together to get 7. So labeling them as S, my first thought was sides, but then of course 7. So maybe sashing? Perhaps this is going to go in between the blocks. This one I only needed to do 1. It's a little bit shorter than the others, and I had to label it TB. So my first thought had been top bottom, but then I only needed 1. So those are ready to go. They'll be used next week. I did also use the remaining bit of my white fabric that I received from this week's mystery quilt to make 42 of the smaller rectangles. They're the same size as what I had used in previous weeks to make these blocks. So I'll be doing the same thing where I go through with these ones and the little strips that I made previously to make what I think is the last block that I need for this quilt. I need to make 21 of these. So I'll get started with that. It's a lot of stitching. And then that'll be it for this week. That's week 7 all finished. Fairly simple week. As I said earlier, I just needed to have a few different lengths of, I'm assuming, sashing trimmed and ready to go. And then 21 of this block. I did end up having the same problem that I did with the previous ones that are similar, where the top and the bottom, it's not quite right. I did do a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, which allowed me to trim the sides to the 6.5. But the width of the fabric had already been determined by Threads That Bind when they sent it to me. They sent it in the package in 6.5 lengths, 6.5 inch lengths, and I just trimmed them down into what they needed to be. And they weren't always exactly 6.5 inches. So all of these blocks are very close to being 6.5 inches square, but they're not exactly, they're not perfect. Ideally, it would have been better if the strips of fabric that they had sent were a little bit wider than 6.5 inches, so that I could then square them up after the block was made. However, we're working with what we have. So I'm assuming next week, with week 8, I'm putting all of this together, although, okay, so the bag for week 8 does have, it's gotta be fabric in there. I know I shouldn't be feeling it yet, but I can't wait. So maybe I have some more blocks to make, I'm not sure. I'll wait until then to see what it is I'm doing with all the blocks. I might just keep them as they are and trim all of my other ones to be a little bit smaller, or depending on what I'm doing with them, I might decide to add a little fabric to them. I do have a little bit of white left. I don't think it would be enough. I might have to go shopping. We'll see. All of these things are floating around in my mind while I think about what next week might bring. For now, all I'm going to do is get these ones labeled, everything back into the bag so that I'm ready for next week. And you know what I'm going to say next. If you've been enjoying watching this video and you'd like to see others that I'm working on, you know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification. Bye.